InfoWars host Owen Shroyer has been sentenced to 60 days in prison over what happened on January 6th. And in my humble opinion, this is entirely because of his political speech. The big story was that Owen Shroyer was facing 120 days in prison, and the prosecution in their sentencing recommendation said, look at the things he said before, during, and after. What about what he said? Why does that matter when he's being charged not with inciting a riot or seditious conspiracy? He's being charged with being on restricted grounds. Shroyer's legal team, Shroyer himself, argued 2.5 years of court supervision is more than sufficient penalty for the misdemeanor of being in a restricted place. 2 months in prison? Now that doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense until you take a look at where things are going. Proud Boys leader Tario says prosecutors pushed him to implicate Donald Trump. It's all political, my friends. What we have going on should be plainly obvious to anyone. Should Owen Shroyer have been saying the things he's accused of saying during January 6th when he's outside the Capitol? Maybe not, but he's allowed to. You can call the guy irresponsible, but he's not been charged with incitement or anything like that. It was basically a dude saying things he thought should be said. Now, he said something to the effect of Democrats are tyrants and death to tyrants, but that's not an explicit threat, call to action. It is him expressing his opinion about what he thinks politically. Little bombastic, perhaps even irresponsible, some of you may think. I think so, but he's allowed to say it. People say irresponsible things all of the time. I get accused of saying irresponsible things. So the matter is, should you go to prison? No. But it's all part of the game. It's all part of the moves they are making against anyone who opposes what they do. The establishment machine wants to get rid of Donald Trump. The Uniparty is in control. Now, we have news that came out just about a half an hour, 40 minutes before I started recording this, showing that Kevin McCarthy has called for the formal impeachment inquiry into Biden. This is not an impeachment vote. It's an expansion of what they're already investigating into a formal impeachment inquiry. So we knew this was coming, and I'm glad to see it. But let's talk about how the DOJ has been weaponized, and they're trying to manipulate people into giving them political power, either by implicating Trump or threatening them with 60 days. A lot of people are going, it's 2 months. He'll be back in no time. He shouldn't go to jail at all. Before we get started, however, my friends, go to Timcast.com, pick up your tickets to our Miami event. Click Timcast IRL X Miami or click the link in the description below. We got Donald Trump Jr., Patrick Bet David, Matt Gaetz, Luke Rutkowski, me, Ian Crossland. We'll be on stage hanging out with you 6 to 10 p.m. in Miami, October 6th. We hope to see you there. Link in the description below. Let's read the news. NBC News reports. Host of the far-right media outlet InfoWars was sentenced Tuesday to 60 days in prison for his role in the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. Full stop. Did you see the game they're playing? Dude, his role in the attack? He was standing on the grass. Amazing. Owen Shroyer. Look what he, let's just keep going. Owen Shroyer is one of only a handful of January 6 participants charged with a crime despite neither entering the Capitol building nor being accused of committing violence or destruction on Capitol grounds. Prosecutors charged Shroyer because he had previously signed a deferred prosecution agreement after interrupting a congressional hearing in 2019 and had agreed as part of that case not to utter loud, threatening, or abusive language or to engage in any disorderly or disruptive content at any place upon the United States Capitol grounds. That's it. Owen Shroyer had an agreement not to come and bullhorn because he did it before. I think they said it was like disorderly or something, interrupting an official proceeding. I don't know. And here's the funny thing. Owen Shroyer in the Capitol yelling, interrupting their proceedings. And they said, just don't do it again. That's it. They said, sir, just don't do it again. This time, when he showed up, they said, you had an agreement not to do it, so we're gonna charge you. They're saying, I love how they say his role in the January 6th attack. No. In the following paragraph, they say he was charged because he violated a deferment agreement. You see the big difference here? This is where it gets really, really fascinating when you look at how they decided to prosecute him and what they wanted. The government said The prosecutor said, look at his speech before, during, and after. Hold on there a minute. If we're charging him for violating a deferred agreement, that's all you need. You say he came to this place and he was loud and obnoxious and agreed not to. More importantly, and they did mention this, you say he agreed not to show up on the Capitol grounds. He showed up, case closed. But they did not charge him with any of that either. He's simply charged for being on restricted grounds. They say about 1,100 defendants have been charged in connection with the January 6th U.S. Capitol attack, and more than 600 have been sentenced, including more than 370 to periods of incarceration. Quote, Democrats are posing as communists, but we know what they really are. They're just tyrants. They're tyrants, Shroyer said on a bullhorn. He said, and so today on January 6th, we declare death to tyranny, death to tyrants. He did not. So again, call it irresponsible. I got no problem with that. But there's a big difference between incitement and saying what you think. The government sought 120 days of incarceration for Shroyer, saying that while he did not step foot inside the Capitol, many of those who listened to him did. But hold on. They didn't charge him with that. See, that's the interesting thing here. Shroyer's defense team said the case had been characterized by cooperative spirit between the defense and the government and asked that he be spared prison time. When he was at the Capitol on January 6th, Shroyer wore two hats. One was that of an outraged citizen who believed that an election had been rigged. The other as a full-time journalist and commentator who sought a front row seat to an historic event. During Tuesday's sentencing hearing, Shroyer told the court, I was not part of any larger plan for illegal activity or violence that day. His sentence was by Judge Timothy Kelly, who last week sent Proud Boys founder Enrique Tarrio to federal prison for 22 years. Amazing. We have this article from Timcast.com where Owen Shroyer had responded. This is fascinating. In their response to the government's proposed sentence, Shroyer's attorneys argued the prosecution is taking direct aim at freedom of speech. It seeks to penalize Mr. Shroyer for his viewpoints, claiming apparently that his views are relevant offense conduct that must be considered in crafting a sentence sufficient, but not greater than necessary, to punish the crime to which Mr. Shroyer pleaded guilty, a single misdemeanor count of entering and remaining in a restricted building or grounds. That's it. Shroyer is seeking a sentence without jail time and has argued that the 2 years he had spent on pretrial supervised release was sufficient. Given the government's shocking attempt to use protected speech in this case as a sentencing factor, special leniency is required to deter the government from overreaching in similar cases. None of the utterances recited by the government and attributed to Mr. Shroyer are prohibited speech, and the government has made no serious effort to prove that Mr. Shroyer's utterances packed the inculpatory punch of prohibited speech, whether that be incitement, a true threat, or conspiracy to commit another crime. Unlike other defendants appearing before this court in the context of the January 6th riot, Mr. Shroyer has not been charged with conspiracy to engage in seditious conspiracy. His words cannot be twisted into circumstantial evidence of an intent to oppose the authority of the government by force. Let me just break this down for you again. If the argument is he violated a pre-trial deferment or a deferred prosecution agreement, DPA, then why are they trying to make it seem like he is involved in pushing people into this Capitol? If he was charged, if they're saying that's the reason, why in his initial going to the Capitol, being on Capitol grounds and yelling, why was his yelling that time no big deal? No charges. They just said, just don't do it again. He did it again. Why didn't they charge him? Why didn't they simply say there's no real charge here other than you violated your deferred prosecutorial agreement, so we'll sentence you based on that? It's very interesting. They wanted the charge related to January 6th, so they had to go with being on restricted grounds. They wanted the case, the sentencing, to be related to his speech, despite none of that being the case. You take a look at this judge and where we are now. Proud Boys leader Tarrio says prosecutors pushed him to implicate Trump. This is a seditious conspiracy. This is it. And it's funny because you get these liberals who don't pay attention to what's going on and they say, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. What do you mean? We know they're doing this. We have more than one person saying they came to them and say Trump did this. We've got people who have quite literally done this. There are people who are charged and they came out and said, I blame Donald Trump. And they got like a month or two. And there are people who said, no, I won't say it. And they're still locked up. So when Enrique Tarrio says, this is what they came and said, why would I not believe it? It's already happened. This is what they're doing. They need to tie Trump to what happened because Trump said, we're going to peacefully protest. And the breach of the Capitol happened before Trump finished speaking. He was still speaking to his rally when the crackpots smashed down the barricades and ran to the Capitol. This is what they want to do. They want to remove Trump from the ballot, and this is how they do it. The Washington Post. Ooh, this is going to be fun. Before he went to trial on charges of seditious conspiracy and other counts related to the January 6th Capitol riot, Henry Enrique Tarrio was open to cutting a deal with prosecutors. The leader of the far-right Proud Boys had been through the federal criminal system before for selling stolen medical supplies in Florida and knew that those who pleaded guilty can get much less prison time than those who go to trial. That's how it is with the feds. He talked about the medical supplies thing. I don't remember the exact details, but I think he was, I don't know if it was selling stolen supplies. I could be wrong. I thought it was resale of supplies, and it may be that they were stolen and he didn't know. I have no idea. Or he's guilty of the crime and he did it. So be it, whatever. It's immaterial to January 6th. I was looking and seeking what type of plea offer would, what the plea offer would look like, Tarrio said in a phone interview with the Post. They didn't want to give me a number, he said, referring to a possible prison sentence. I need a number. To me, the most important thing is when I get home to my family. Instead, Tarrio said the prosecutors asked him what role Donald Trump played in getting the Proud Boys to attack the Capitol. He said the prosecutors, accompanied by FBI agents in the Miami jail where Tarrio was being held at the time, showed him messages he exchanged with a second person, who in turn was connected to a third person who was connected to Trump. You know what that means? You could say the same thing of me. We've had Donald Trump Jr. on the show. We've been in communication with him. We're doing an event with him in Miami. They're going to come and be like, Tim Pool is 1 degree away from Donald Trump himself. Yeah, because we're in politics. We interview a lot of people. I'm probably 1 degree away from Joe Biden because we've had Rick Santorum on. Who else have we had on prominent? Insert any politician. And we've had multiple people on, and we've been in communication with them, and they have communicated with Joe Biden. It's the stupidest thing imaginable. Tarrio said he told investigators he didn't know the third person. He refused to name the people who prosecutors said allegedly connected him to Trump. Ultimately, the nearly 5-month trial did not connect the Proud Boys to the then president. Beyond Trump's seeming endorsement of the group in a presidential debate in the fall of 2020, in which he told them to stand back and stand by. The televised comments caused Proud Boys membership to spike. Interesting. They weren't trying to get the truth, Tarrio said. They were trying to coerce me into signing something that's not true. And that is exactly how it goes. Quick story for those that didn't hear me say it, because I've told it probably like 7 or 8 times. I was once charged with driving on a suspended license. This was back when I was like 20 years old, I think. And the reason was I had gotten pulled over by a cop and giving a speeding ticket, despite the fact that I was not speeding. I was exiting in Lakeshore Drive, going like 5 to 10 miles under the limit, and he pulled me over and claimed I was going 20 over. Cop didn't care. And I was like, I wasn't speeding. I was told to a judge. And I'm like, what? Like, what just happened? It's like a $75 ticket. What I didn't know is that if you're under the age of 21 and you get 2 moving violations, they suspend your license. So when I went to go visit my sister because her husband was overseas in Iraq in danger, and she was worried, I was like, well, I'll just go hang out here. But I only had a few months to go to court to contest the ticket. Ultimately, I said, it's too difficult to deal with. It takes too much time. I'd have to drive back to Chicago. And my sister, being a good sister, decided she'd pay the ticket for me. And I said, thank you. What I did not realize that by paying it, you're pleading guilty. And they instantly suspended my license. I had no idea that happened. I received no notice. They didn't say upon completion of this, your license will be suspended. You can no longer drive. No idea. I eventually drive back to Chicago. And literally, as I'm re-entering my mom's neighborhood, just getting back from the drive, I get pulled over. And it was an illegal pullover. It's amazing how all this happens. And I did nothing wrong when I was driving. They pulled my car over and said I was driving on a suspended license. When I went to court, I was told that I would go to jail for a year over what happened and that plead guilty or else. I was surprised. I thought I had a case for something or other. And I ended up telling the judge asked me, were you coerced into giving this plea? I said, yes. And he was like, yes. And I was like, yeah, they're threatening me with a year in jail for getting 2 tickets. One was that my headlights were out and the other was for speeding. I go to jail for a year for that? And that's what they threatened me with. So anyway, I digress. My point is, with stories like this, the judge laughed. He told me to go get a lawyer. And then ultimately what ended up happening was I ended up paying $150 fine by pleading guilty. And that was it. And I didn't drive again for like 2 years. It's crazy. But for someone like Enrique Tarrio, this is how the government operates. Everything they do is coercive and unjust. Sorry, that's the way it is. There is no circumstance in any court, anywhere, for any reason where there is anything other than coercion for gain. It's called the trial tax or the jury tax. Here's how it should operate. The prosecution says, we believe you committed a crime. We believe you should get this amount of time. That's it. We will not offer you anything else. It would be immoral for us to say you deserve 5 years, but if you go easy, we'll give you less time. I think that's ridiculous. They should not be allowed to do that. The way it goes is they argue that if you go to court, if you go to trial, you're basically refusing to take responsibility for what you've done. But if you plead guilty, it shows remorse, and so you deserve less time. Spare me. It's coercion, the trial tax. You deserve a right to a speedy trial, and there should be no pressure put against you. The feds should have to. I don't think, in fact, not only that, I think that the judge should have a discretion for sentencing guidelines, even up to total nullification. The prosecution should be able to say, we want X amount of time because the guidelines are this, and the judge should be allowed to say no to them. And he can. To be completely honest, he can. But I do not believe it is justice. I do not believe that it lends itself to innocent until proven guilty, that the coercion like this can exist. Because what happens is innocent people end up in jail all too often because of this. You'll get charged with a crime. And let's say in the instance of me driving on a suspended license, the prosecutor said, so you admit you're driving on a suspended license. And I was like, I received no formal notice, and I literally it just happened, and I just got back. And he was like, so you admit it? I'm like, there's no reasonable nature. Here's what I think should have happened. The judge should have said, what happened? And I should have said, here's the story. And he should have went, okay, here's what we're going to do. You got to pay the fine. It's $30. That's what it was. It was like $30. And you've got to you've got to file a form to get your license reinstated. You've paid the tickets. Don't do it again. Have a nice day. Instead, the judge was like, too bad, so sad. This is not justice. It's mechanization. And I think density lends itself to this. Enrique Tarrio, what should happen is they say, here is the crime you are charged with, and you will receive, on average, this amount of time. That's it. We're going to go to trial. You can plead guilty, and that's it. These are the years you'll get, or you can fight it. The reason they don't do that is because then people would be like, might as well go to trial. But you have a right to a trial. So they use this as a weapon against you to terrify you. You end up with innocent people being told by their lawyers, especially public defenders, they just got to get through this. They want to get their check, and they say, look, man, you're not going to win. You're going to go to jail, take the plea deal, and you'll get a slap on the wrist. I've got more than just that one experience with it. Falsely accused, me and my brother, by mall security guards, lying. Apparently someone shoplifted. They were told to go look for him. They wrongly profile us, end up beating us up. We get arrested for it. So they lie to the cops about it. We're told by our lawyer, just take the plea deal and plead guilty. And we said no. And they said they're trying to get 6 months in jail for what you're accused of. And it's a long story, but we ultimately said no. And that resulted in us winning. The judge was shocked. Why aren't they taking the plea deal? It was a community service plea deal. It was a slap on the wrist. And our lawyer was like, Your Honor, because they're innocent. And then the judge called everyone to his chambers. It's a longer story than that. But the gist of it was the judge said, I'm dismissing this case. This is a waste of our time. Here's how it goes in the court systems. They don't want if everyone went to trial, the court system would grind to a halt and everyone would be released on constitutional grounds of a right to a speedy trial. They are desperate that you plead guilty. In this instance with Tarrio, the stakes were much higher. They want Trump locked up. Not yet. They want him off the ballot first. They want to stop him by any means necessary. This is where they use the weight of the trial tax and unjust prosecution to target individuals like Tarrio. It's kind of crazy if you think about it. You know, we had Enrique Tarrio here before and after. He went to jail over the BLM flag thing. He wasn't in D.C. on January 6th. They say that he posted, "Don't leave" on Parler. Don't effing leave. That's all he said. And that's what they use to say, oh, he was the leader of a conspiracy. You know, I was talking to, we had a guy on here talking about self-defense, and he said neighborhood watches are dangerous. This is what they do. They're dangerous because if you have a neighborhood watch and then you end up in an armed robbery situation where you've got a consistent, you've got a consistent burglar going through the neighborhood, you've got a person of interest, they're caught burglarizing a building, you chase them down, a scuffle ensues, Arbery gets shot in the scuffle fighting over a gun and dies. Instead of just getting charged with the death of the person, the neighborhood watch makes it conspiracy. That's how evil these people are. So this is what happens. Enrique Tarrio probably didn't tell anybody to do anything. Don't effing leave on Parler. Come on, let's be real. Legally, it's like, what did he really mean by it? But I think we all get it. Reasonably, he was saying not to leave. But was there a plan? Was there a conspiracy? No. I really think that's just no. But because they have a name brand, because they're a group, it is a conspiracy. If like a group of your buddies showed up, they could try to argue conspiracy, but who are you? It's like, well, it's a guy I know. When Antifa and the far left extremists ransacked D.C. during Trump's inauguration, they tried conspiracy and it didn't work. Why? Because these people showed up randomly. Many of these Proud Boys don't know each other. They showed up randomly, but they have forward-facing leadership, and that's all it takes. Antifa, a bunch of masked people who don't play well with cops. This is what they're going for. The manipulation of the system and to strike fear. Why? They're losing. The impeachment inquiry has begun. It's slow roll, I know, but we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. Cultural victories across the board. Rumble's tremendous success. Bud Light's failures. You get the point. I've said it way too many times. But we can see the victory is happening. Look at New Mexico. The governor tries to decree guns illegal because they're losing. On the Second Amendment, we are winning. Constitutional carry going into effect in Nebraska, more than half the country. So in their panic, desperation, she just bangs a gavel saying, no, it's illegal now. And what happens? People show up and say, no, it's not. Nope. This is their panic and their fear. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 4 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.